The stars have always beckoned humanity. For millennia, people looked up at the night sky and wondered, what is out there? They built telescopes, they launched rockets, and they dreamed of meeting other intelligent civilizations among the stars. When those civilizations finally arrived, they did not come as friends. The first ships appeared over the Earth on a bright Tuesday morning in 2147. They blotted out the sun over every major city. Massive ships, each larger than a mountain, hung in the sky like dark clouds heralding a terrible storm. World governments tried to establish contact. They sent radio signals. They broadcast messages of peace in every human language. They waited for an answer, gripped by a mixture of hope and fear. The answer came in the form of plasma fire. The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 40 years. 12 ancient species, each existing beyond human comprehension, had united long ago to control all known space. They had laws, they had systems, and they had a structure that had functioned longer than humanity had existed as a species. And they decided that Earth belonged to them. The great arbiter, Theon of the Valkyrie, watched the invasion from his command ship. His species had 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond shape on a face that humans would find repulsive. His skin was the color of aged copper, and he moved with the slow confidence of a creature that had never known true fear. "Report," he said to his tactical officer. "The primitive species is resisting, Great Arbiter. They are using chemical propellant weapons and nuclear devices." Theon let out a sound similar to laughter. "Nuclear devices? How primitive." "Continue the suppression." Down on the surface of the Earth, humanity fought with everything it had. Tanks rolled through the streets of cities, fighters raced through the sky, and soldiers fired rifles at enemies they could barely see. Missiles rose into the sky, leaving fiery trails, aiming for the alien ships above. None of it mattered. The Concord's shields absorbed nuclear explosions like a pond absorbs raindrops. Their weapons cut through human armor like sunlight through mist. In the first hour, every major military base on Earth turned into smoking craters. In the first day, every human fleet was sunk. In the first week, every government that refused to surrender was erased. Some people continued to fight in the mountains, forests, and ruined cities. Small groups of soldiers continued the resistance. They set traps, they staged ambushes, and they died by the thousands. But they kept fighting. The Concord found it amusing. "They are persistent," noted Commander Velksel, second in command to Theon. "Like insects," Theon replied. "All young species are the same. They believe their individual lives matter. They believe they can change the outcome with willpower alone. They will learn." The conquest of Earth took exactly 3 days. By the end of the 3rd day, every human still holding a weapon was dead. The remaining 6 billion men, women, and children were herded like cattle and processed. The processing was efficient. Each human was scanned, cataloged, and assigned a number. They were issued tokens to wear around their necks, metal discs, containing all the information the Concord needed to know about them: name, age, skills, health status, and reproductive potential. The Concord was very interested in reproductive potential. Humans reproduced rapidly compared to the ancient species. A healthy human female could bring forth a new worker every year for decades. This made them valuable. The ancient species divided the Earth among themselves. The Valkyrie took North America and Europe. The Kater claimed Asia. The Moldok wanted Africa for its mineral resources. And so, in 12 ways, every piece of human territory ended up in the hands of someone else. Then the real work began. Humans were immediately forced to work. They mined minerals. They built structures. They cleaned the massive stations that the Concord built in orbit around Earth. They performed work that was too dangerous, too boring, or too unpleasant for the ancient species. The work was hard, and the hours were long. Food was barely enough to survive, but humans adapted, as they always did. They learned to keep their heads down. They learned to speak the languages of their masters. They learned which overseers could be bargained with and which should be avoided. They learned to survive. Theon was promoted for his success on Earth. He became one of the 12 great arbiters who ruled the Concord, possessing near unlimited power. From time to time, he reviewed reports on the human population, tracking their productivity and obedience. The numbers were always good. "Humans are ideal workers," his analyst told him. "They are smart enough to perform complex tasks, but not smart enough to cause problems. They have no natural weapons, no claws, no poison, no armor. They form emotional bonds, which makes them easy to control, threaten their families, and they will do anything. Tion nodded in satisfaction. Continue as planned. I want to increase production quotas by 10% in the next quarter. Yes, Great Arbiter. Years passed, then decades. Children were born who had never known freedom. They grew up learning two things: how to work and how to obey. They saw their parents grow old and tired, their backs bent from labor, their spirits broken by endless slavery. Some of them dreamed of something else, but dreams were dangerous. Dreams led to death. Maya Chan was born in 2156, 9 years after the invasion. Her mother worked at a processing plant, sorting minerals for 16 hours a day. Her father had been killed for looking at an overseer the wrong way. She had no memories of him, except for the stories her mother told in whispers late at night when the monitors were less active. Your father was a soldier, her mother would say. He fought when the ships came. He was brave. What happened to him? Young Maya would ask. Her mother's eyes would go distant. He was too brave. He wouldn't stop fighting. So they made an example of him. Maya learned the lesson. Being brave was dangerous. Attracting attention was dangerous. The people who survived were the ones who stayed quiet, who worked hard, and who never gave the overseers a reason to look at them twice. Thus, Maya became invisible. She worked in the mines from the age of 12. Crawling through tunnels too narrow for adult bodies, she never complained, never asked questions, and never looked anyone in the eye, but she watched, she listened, and she remembered everything. By the age of 20, Maya had learned 7 alien languages. She knew every overseer's shift schedule in her sector. She knew who took bribes and who didn't. She knew the location of every cell, every sensor, and every checkpoint within a 100-kilometer radius. She didn't know why she was collecting this information. She just knew it felt important. It was like gathering weapons for a war that might never happen. One night, when Maya was 23, something strange occurred. She was in her sleeping quarters, a small room she shared with 11 other workers, when a hand touched her in the dark. "Don't speak," a voice whispered. "Don't turn around, just listen." Maya's heart beat faster, but she obeyed. "We have been watching you," the voice continued. "You are careful. You are smart. You see what others miss. We need people like you." "Who are you?" Maya breathed. "We are those who remember. Those who haven't forgotten who we were before. Those who are planning something." "Planning what?" came the question. A pause. When the voice spoke again, it was barely louder than a breath. "Everything." The hand left her shoulder. By the time Maya turned around, there was no one there. A week later, Maya thought she had imagined it all. A dream, a hallucination, too much recycled air and too little real food. But then she began to notice things, small things. A worker who moved differently than others, with a controlled efficiency that spoke of training rather than exhaustion. A message scratched on a wall in a code Maya almost recognized. A rhythm tapped out on pipes that seemed random but followed a pattern she couldn't quite grasp. Something was happening, something that had been in the works for a long time, and Maya had been chosen to be a part of it. The Concord overseers saw none of this. They saw humans working, sleeping, and dying. They saw numbers in reports. Productivity was rising, resistance was falling, and the population was stable. They saw exactly what they expected to see. This was their first mistake. The ancient species had studied humanity before the invasion. They intercepted radio signals. They analyzed human history. They concluded that humans were violent, fragmented, and self-destructive. They believed that humans could never work together long enough to pose a threat. What they didn't understand was that human history was not just a chronicle of conflict. It was also a chronicle of survival. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and famines. They had survived rulers who tried to destroy them. They had survived horrors that would have broken other species. And they did it by working together, not always perfectly, but when the situation became desperate enough, when the enemy was clear enough, humans could unite in ways the ancient species could never imagine. The Concord also made another mistake, perhaps an even greater one. They studied human governments, human armies, and human nations. They looked at the structures humanity had built and concluded that these structures represented the entirety of human capability. They never studied what humans did when those structures were taken away. They never studied what humans built in secret, in the dark, in whispers passed from parent to child. They never studied what humans could create when they were fueled, not by hope, but by something much more ancient and much darker. They never studied human spite. Spite was something the ancient species didn't truly understand. The Vari had a word for it, but the word roughly translated to small malice, a minor emotion beneath the notice of mature beings. The Concord believed that spite was a weakness, a sign of limited intelligence and emotional control. They were wrong. Human spite was not small. Human spite was an ocean. It was a force that could sustain a person through decades of suffering. It could be passed down from generation to generation, growing stronger with every story. It could be quiet and patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And it could build things terrible, magnificent things. 20 years after the invasion, in a mine deep beneath the icy surface of Europa, a group of people gathered in secret. They were workers, cleaners, and low-level technicians, the invisible people the Concord never bothered to notice. Some of them had been meeting like this for years. Others were new, pulled into the network through one whispered conversation after another. At the front of the group stood a woman named Amara Okona. She had once been a professor of engineering at a university that no longer existed. Now, she cleaned filter plants on the surface and designed weapons in her head. "Report," she said. One by one, the others shared what they had learned. Schedules, access codes, technical specifications, stolen from overseers' tablets. Information that, on its own, meant nothing. But combined with thousands of other fragments of information collected over decades, it formed a picture of weakness. "Their shields can be disrupted if hit with the right frequency," said a young man who worked in communications repair. "I found the specifications in a manual that should have been destroyed. Their plasma weapons overheat. If you feed them too much energy," said an elderly woman. "One of their technicians got drunk and told me. He thought I didn't understand his language. They need a specific mineral for fuel," said another. "We mine this mineral. We know all the deposits. We know which refineries process it. We know how it gets from here to there." Amara listened to it all. She had been listening for 15 years, ever since she first joined the resistance. In that time, she had seen the organization grow from a handful of enraged survivors into a network spanning a dozen star systems. And they were still waiting, still planning, still collecting information. "When?" someone asked. The question hung in the air, filled with frustration and desperate hope. "When do we fight back?" Amara's answer was the same one she always gave. "When we are ready, not before." The ancient species lived for thousands of years. They thought in centuries, planned in millennia. In a sense, they were right. This gave them an advantage over shorter-lived species. But they were wrong about humanity. Humans didn't live for thousands of years. They lived for decades, short flashes of consciousness in the boundless darkness of time. But this brevity gave them something the ancient species didn't have: urgency. Every human life was precious because every human life was short. And when humans decided that something was worth dying for, they spent every moment of their short existence working toward that goal. The Concord believed that humans would forget, that children born in slavery would accept their place in the natural order of things, and that time would dull the edge of human anger. They were wrong about that, too. Maya-chan was 40 years old when she first met Amara Okona. By that time, Maya had risen through the invisible ranks of the resistance to become a coordinator responsible for gathering information in 3 mining colonies. She had never held a weapon, never struck a blow, never done anything that could be called fighting. But she had built something, a web of eyes and ears that saw everything and forgot nothing. A web of human intelligence that stretched across the Concord space, invisible, patient, and waiting. "You've done good work," Amara told her. "More than good, important." Maya shook her head. "It's not enough. We've been gathering information for decades, but we've done nothing. People die every day. Children are born in slavery, and we just watch." Amara placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know. Believe me, I know. But we only have one chance. If we start too soon, we will perish. All of us. And then there will be no one left to try again." "So, when?" Maya asked. Amara smiled. It was an unhappy expression. "Soon," she said. "The pieces are almost in place. A few more years, maybe less." "What pieces?" Maya asked. "The ones that will change everything." Deep in hidden shipyards scattered across the Concord space, in hollowed-out asteroids, abandoned mining stations, and places the ancient species had forgotten existed, humans were building something. They started from scratch. Scrap metal, stolen tools, knowledge gathered from a million overheard conversations and intercepted transmissions and borrowed technical manuals. They worked in secret, in the dark, slowly to avoid detection. It took them 50 years. But now, finally, the work was nearly finished. On a shipyard hidden beneath the ice of Pluto, a young engineer named Raj Patel ran his hands over the hull of something impossible. A ship. A human ship. Built using technology combining the best of the 12 ancient species with something terrifyingly human. "She's beautiful," he whispered. The ship was 12 kilometers long. Its hull was as black as the void between stars, designed to absorb all forms of radiation that the Concord used for detection. Its weapons were a hybrid of alien technology and human innovation, capable of destruction on a scale the ancient species could never have imagined. Its name was written on the hull in 100 human languages, because the builders couldn't agree on just one. They called her Terra's Spite, and she was only the first. In conference rooms throughout the Concord's space, the great arbiters reviewed their reports and found nothing suspicious. Human productivity was excellent, human resistance was minimal, and the human population was well controlled. Everything was exactly as it should be. They had no idea they were sitting on a bomb that had been under construction for 70 years. They had no idea that every human who served them, who cleaned their stations, mined their minerals, and bowed their head in submission was counting the days. They had no idea that humanity was not broken. It was waiting. Admiral Yuki Tanaka had never seen the sky. She was born in 2154, 7 years after the invasion, in an underground complex on Mars that had once been a human colony. Now it was a labor camp, a place where people were sent to slowly die, mining minerals from the crust of the red planet. Her mother had been a scientist before the invasion. Her father had been a soldier who died in battle. She had no memories of either of them, only the stories passed down by other prisoners about the people who refused to give up. Yuki grew up surrounded by stone, metal, and recycled air. She worked in the mines from the age of 8, small enough to fit into spaces where adults couldn't pass. She watched friends die from accidents, exhaustion, and the casual cruelty of overseers who considered human life less valuable than the minerals they mined. By age 15, Yuki decided she would either escape or die trying. She was recruited into the resistance at age 18. The man who found her was old, older than anyone Yuki had ever met. His name was Marcus Webb, and he had been a general in the human army before the invasion. Now, he was a cleaner, washing toilets in the overseer's rooms. "Are you smart?" he asked her during a stolen moment in the maintenance room. "You are spiteful, and you are careful. Those are the 3 things we need. Who are we?" Yuki asked. Marcus smiled. He had almost no teeth left, knocked out many years ago by a Velkari guard. "Everything," he said. "Everyone who remembers." The resistance had no official name. Its members called it different things: the network, the underground, the whisper. It was an organism that grew in the dark, spreading among the enslaved humanity like roots through soil. It had no central headquarters, no chain of command that could be broken. It was everywhere and nowhere. It consisted of millions of ordinary people doing small, invisible things. A technician copying data files while pretending to clean, a factory worker sabotaging equipment so it looked like an accident, a house servant listening to conversations and memorizing every word, a nurse treating wounded rebels and claiming they had died. Each person knew only a few others in the network. If they were caught, they could betray only those few. The organization was designed to withstand losses, heal from wounds, and grow, regardless of how many of its cells were destroyed. Yuki learned all this slowly, over years. At first, she was given small errands, passing messages, watching for patrols, memorizing schedules. Then larger tasks, recruiting new members, teaching others what she had learned, coordinating actions between multiple facilities. By age 30, she was directing operations across the Martian sector. By age 40, she was one of 12 people coordinating the resistance across the conquered space. And by age 50, she became something entirely different. "We need a leader," Amara Okona said during one of their rare in-person meetings. They were in a hidden chamber beneath the ice of Europa, surrounded by equipment that had taken decades to smuggle in and build. "Who?" "Someone who can command a fleet when the time comes." "A fleet?" Yuki shook her head. "We have one ship, and it's not even finished. It will be finished, and it won't be one." Amara brought up a holographic display. Stolen technology, repurposed and improved. Dots of light appeared on a map of the Concord's space, scattered but numerous. 17 shipyards, 32 capital ships. More than 100 smaller vessels were under construction for support and strike operations. Yuki looked at the display. She knew some of this information, but seeing it all together was something else. A weight settled in her stomach. Not fear, exactly, but something close to it. "This isn't a resistance," she said quietly. "This is an army. Yes, and an army needs a general." Amara met her gaze. "You are the best of us, Yuki. You have directed our operations for 20 years. You know our people. You know the enemy. You know how to fight without being seen. Fighting without being seen is not the same as waging war." "It is." Amara's voice was soft. "We have been waging war for 70 years. The only difference is that the enemy didn't know it. Now they will." Yuki was silent for a long time. Through the walls of the chamber, she could hear the distant sounds of machines, the pumps and filters keeping the hidden base alive. Somewhere above, millions of people were working on the Concord stations, keeping their heads down, waiting for a signal that might never come. Only now, it would come. The signal they had been waiting for, planning for, and dreaming of for 3 generations. The moment when humanity would stop hiding and start fighting. "When?" she asked. "In 5 years, Amara said. "Maybe less. The ship Terra's Spite will be ready in 3, the rest of the fleet within 5. She spread her hands. "After that, we begin. 5 years. Yuki closed her eyes. "Do you know what can happen in 5 years? How many people will die?" "Yes, I know exactly." Amara's voice grew firmer. "But if we start too soon, everyone will die. All the humans in the Concord space. They will destroy us like they destroyed the other species who caused too much trouble. We know this. We have seen the records." The records. Yuki had seen them 2 stolen data files documenting the history of the Concord in its struggle against rebellious species. Species that were completely destroyed, their worlds sterilized, their names erased from history. The Concord didn't negotiate with rebels. It didn't show mercy. It simply eliminated the problem with the cold efficiency of creatures who had ruled the galaxy for 40 years. Humanity would have one chance, one single moment when everything had to go right. If they failed, if they started too soon, too late, or in the wrong direction, they would join the list of extinct species that had made the mistake of challenging the Concord. 5 years, Yuki said again. She opened her eyes. "I will need access to everything, every ship, every operation, every piece of intelligence we have." Amara nodded. "You will get everything, and I will handle the training of the people. Real training, not just the basics. We need pilots, weapons officers, and tactical commanders. We need people who can lead a real battle, not just sabotage and reconnaissance. We already have training programs, hidden simulators using stolen Concord software. But you're right, they need to be expanded." "And what about ground forces?" Yuki asked. "We have enough people ready to fight. We lack equipment." Yuki pondered. Equipment was the hardest thing to acquire. Weapons, armor, vehicles, all were under the Concord's strict control. Humans were not allowed to own anything more dangerous than a kitchen knife. "We will take it from them," she said. "When the time comes, we will strike their weapons depots before they even realize what is happening. That's risky. If we alert them, then we need to make sure we don't." Yuki's thoughts were already racing ahead, planning, calculating. "We will strike them everywhere at once, every weapons depot, every base, every ship, at the same moment. They won't be able to react because they won't know what is happening." "Can we coordinate something like that across the entire Concord space?" Yuki asked. "We will have to," she said. Amara looked at the holographic display, at the scattered dots of light representing humanity's hidden strength. "We have been communicating in secret for decades. We need to do it again. One signal, one moment. Everything simultaneously." Amara was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. It's the only way." She reached out and touched Yuki's shoulder. "Admiral Tanaka. Sounds good. I'm not a real admiral. I've never been on a ship. None of us have. We will learn together." Amara smiled, and there was something ferocious in her expression. "We've learned everything else they tried to hide from us. Why should this be any different?" The next 5 years were the longest and shortest in Yuki's life. She traveled constantly, moving through the Concord space disguised as cargo, as a transferred worker, as a body being sent for recycling. She visited every hidden shipyard, every training center, every cell of the resistance network. She met thousands of people, pilots who had learned to fly using stolen simulators, engineers who designed weapons in their heads while working in the Concord's factories, soldiers who trained in secret using improvised equipment. They were all waiting, they were all ready, and they all looked at her with the same expression, hope mixed with despair. It was like shipwrecked survivors seeing land on the horizon. The time of their waiting was crushing. But Yuki carried it. She had carried burdens her whole life. She also learned everything she could about the Concord's tactics, its weaknesses, and its psychology. She studied their victories and their defeats, the rare ones they had suffered, mostly against each other in the ancient wars before the alliance formed. She learned how each of the 12 ancient species thought, how they made decisions, what they valued, and what they feared. The Velkari were the most dangerous. They had dominated the Concord from the beginning, and they were paranoid about challenges to their power, but their paranoia was focused on themselves and the other ancient species. They couldn't imagine that humans, weak, short-lived, conquered humans, could pose any real threat. The Katar were arrogant. They believed their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy, and they had stopped innovating centuries ago. Their ships were powerful but predictable, following patterns that hadn't changed for thousands of years. The Moldok were cruel but not smart. They always solved problems with force, and they couldn't adapt when force didn't work. "We won't fight them on their terms," Yuki told her commanders during one of their secret meetings. "We can't. They are stronger than us, more experienced than us, and more numerous than us. If we fight in an open battle, we will lose." "And how will we fight?" asked Commander Chen Maya Chen, who had risen in the resistance to become one of Yuki's most trusted officers. "We will cheat." Yuki brought up a tactical display. "We use everything we know about them against them. We attack where they are weak. We disappear when they are strong. We make them doubt themselves, each other, and everything they think they know." "Psychological warfare," said another commander. "More than that, total war. Every tool, every weapon, every advantage we can find, make, or steal. We don't play by their rules. We don't play by any rules. We do whatever it takes to win." The room fell silent. Yuki looked at the faces around her. People of every background, every age, united by suffering, hope, and something darker. "I won't lie to you," she said. "Many of us will die. Perhaps most of us. This is not a story where the good guys easily win and everyone lives happily ever after. This is war, and war has a price." She paused. "But our children will be free, and our grandchildren will be free. Every generation after us will look at the sky and know that it belongs to them, that no one can take it away. That is what we are fighting for. Not for ourselves, for them." Maya Chan said quietly, "My grandmother died during the invasion. My mother died in the mines. I never expected to die peacefully in my sleep. If I am to die anyway, I would rather die fighting." Others nodded. One by one, murmurs of agreement echoed around the room. Yuki felt something shift in her chest. Pride, perhaps, or gratitude, or just the realization that she was surrounded by people who had made the same choice she had, to risk everything for a future they might never see. "Then let's get to work," she said. The preparations accelerated. Ships were finished, tested, and hidden again. Weapons were manufactured in secret factories that the Concord didn't know about. Communication networks were created using technology that the ancient species thought was impossible. And everywhere, people waited. Millions of them on thousands of worlds, each ready to play their part when the signal came. 3 months before the scheduled date, something unexpected happened. One of the hidden shipyards was discovered. Yuki received the news in the middle of the night, a coded message that made her blood run cold. A Velkari patrol had stumbled upon the facility in the asteroid belt near the border with the Terra. They found the ships. Human ships. Ships that shouldn't exist. "How many did they see?" Yuki demanded. "Enough," the messenger said. 2 cruisers. Partially completed. Production equipment, records. We destroyed what we could, but they might have captured some of the data. We don't know how much." Yuki closed her eyes. This was the nightmare scenario. The one they had feared for 70 years. If the Concord found out what was happening, if they realized the scale of the uprising, they wouldn't crush it, they would wipe it out. "What is our status?" she asked. "The Terra's Spite is ready. Fully operational, fully armed. 23 other ships are ready for combat. Another dozen could be ready within weeks, and ground forces are equipped and trained, ready for action at your command." Yuki thought quickly. They had been planning for 5 months. 5 months to finish the remaining ships, position their forces, and coordinate the massive simultaneous strike that would destroy the Concord before they could react. But 5 months was a long time if the Concord started searching for other shipyards, if they reinforced patrols, and if they began interrogating human workers. "We are accelerating the schedule," she said. The messenger stared at her. "By how much?" "By 3 days. The Concord summit begins in 3 days." Yuki thought feverishly, recalculating, adjusting. "We will strike there. We will show them what we have built, and force them to realize that everything they thought they knew about us was wrong. 3 days. Admiral, we are not ready. Half our fleet. We will catch up." Yuki's voice was hard. "We have no choice. If we wait, they will find us. They will destroy everything we have built. This is our moment. Now or never." She sent the signal that night throughout the conquered space to hidden bases, secret facilities, and ordinary rooms where ordinary people lived their ordinary slave lives. The message spread through whispered conversations, tapped codes, and encrypted transmissions that looked like random noise. 3 days. 3 days until everything changes. Yuki stood in the command center of the Terra Spite, watching the final preparations. The ship hummed around her with a living power that the Concord never could have imagined humans could wield. Through the viewports, she saw the cold stars waiting. She had never seen the sky, never felt real wind on her face, never known what it was like to walk freely on a world that belonged to her people. Maybe she never would. Maybe she would perish in the coming battle, along with thousands of others who had given their lives to the cause. But if she perished, she would perish fighting. And that was more than most people had been allowed for 70 years. "Admiral," said her first officer, "all ships are ready. All ground teams are ready. We are ready to begin on your command." Yuki took a deep breath. The burden on her shoulders had never felt heavier or lighter. "Set course for Axiom Prime," she said. "It is time to remind the galaxy who we are." The fleet emerged from the asteroid field. 17 ships appeared from hideouts all across the conquered space. They converged on a single point, using communication methods that the ancient species could not detect, coordinating a movement that should have been impossible for a conquered race of slaves. The Concord did not notice. They were busy preparing for the summit, gathering their leaders, celebrating 40 years of rule. They had no idea that humanity was coming, and when they arrived, the galaxy would never be the same. Axiom Prime was the most beautiful world in the galaxy. It hung in space like a jewel. Its surface was covered in cities of crystal and gold. Huge towers reached for the heavens. Their spires caught the light of 3 suns. Gardens, the size of continents, bloomed with flowers from 1,000 worlds. Rivers of liquid silver flowed through valleys where the air itself sparkled with engineered particles. It was the heart of the Concord, the place where the 12 ancient species gathered to rule the stars. For 40 years, the galaxy's great decisions were made here, in chambers carved from living crystal and decorated with the treasures of conquered peoples. The annual summit was the most important event of the Concord year. Representatives of all 12 species gathered to divide territories, settle disputes, and plan the future of their eternal empire. It was a time of ceremonies and celebrations, speeches and feasts, displays of power that reminded everyone of the natural order of things. Great Arbiter Tion of the Valkyrie presided over this year's summit. He was old now, even by the standards of his long-lived species. Nearly 3,000 years had passed since his birth. His copper skin had darkened with age, and his vision had dimmed, but his mind remained sharp, and his power stronger than ever. He sat on a throne of black crystal at the head of the Great Hall, looking at the assembled representatives. Each of the 11 other species had sent its best leaders, generals, and diplomats, all dressed in the official robes of their cultures. The room sparkled with precious metals and rare gemstones, a display of wealth that would have stunned any human who saw it. "We gather again," Tion said. His voice carried across the hall without amplification. "To celebrate our unity, to renew our commitment to the principles that have guided us for 40 millennia, a plan for the next century of prosperity and peace." The representatives murmured their approval. That was how the summit always began, with loud words and even louder ceremonies. The real negotiations would begin later, behind closed doors, where the ancient species would argue, threaten, and bargain for advantage. But the ceremonies mattered too. They were a reminder of the Concord's power, its permanence, and its absolute control over the galaxy. Every species that served the Concord knew that it had always been this way, and it always would be. The first day of the summit passed without incident. Speeches were made, toasts were raised. A new species, small four-legged creatures from a world on the edge of the galaxy, was officially accepted into the Concord as a servant race. They were forced to work, mining asteroids, replacing humans who had become too numerous in that sector. They were barely noticed. New servant species were accepted every few years. They came and went. Their short lives flickered against the backdrop of the eternal flame of the Concord civilization. None of it mattered, other than as resources to be used. On the second day, the first reports arrived. "Great Arbiter," said his aide, a young Velkari who had served him for only a century. "We have lost contact with the border fleet." Tion looked up from the document he was reviewing. "Lost contact?" "Yes, Great Arbiter. They were patrolling the edge of Cater space. Their last transmission was routine. Then, nothing. Send ships to investigate. We have sent a scout ship. It should arrive in about an hour." Tion nodded and returned to his document. Border fleets sometimes went silent. Communication equipment failed. Patrols entered regions where signals were disrupted. It was annoying, but not a cause for alarm. An hour later, the scout ship also went silent. "This is unusual," said Commander Velksel, who had been Tion's second-in-command for 500 years. "Two ships, both silent in the same region. Send another patrol," Tion ordered. "A full squadron, and warn Border Fleet 8 to take a support position." "Yes, Great Arbiter." The squadron was sent. The summit continued. The representatives argued about mineral rights, trade routes, and the distribution of labor from the subject species. Tion listened half-heartedly. His attention was increasingly focused on the reports arriving from the border. Each one was stranger than the previous. Border Fleet 8 reported that they had reached the last known position of Border Fleet 7. There was nothing there. "Nothing?" Tion demanded. "What do you mean, nothing?" "No ships, Great Arbiter. No debris, no traces of a signal. Just empty space. It's impossible. Ships don't just disappear. We are conducting a detailed scan. So far, no evidence of what happened has been found." Tion felt a strange sensation in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it. Unease. "Cancel today's summit session," he told his aide. "I need to focus on this matter." The representatives were unhappy but complied. Tion retired to his private quarters, surrounded by screens showing data from across the Concord. Now, more reports were coming in, each stranger than the last. A supply convoy had vanished. Near the Moldok border, an observation post in the outer systems had failed. A patrol ship near a human mining colony sent a distorted transmission about an unknown vessel, then went silent. "What is happening?" Tion muttered. He had ruled the Concord for 800 years. He had seen rebellions, wars, and natural disasters. He had faced challenges that would have destroyed lesser beings, but he had never seen anything like this. "Great Arbiter," said Commander Velksel, entering the chamber. His voice was strange, strained, controlled, as if he were making a great effort to maintain it. "We have a problem. I know we have a problem. I'm reading the reports." "No, Great Arbiter. A different problem." Velksel paused. "The orbital defense system of Axiom Prime has been disabled." The words didn't make sense at first. Tion stared at his commander, waiting for clarification. "Disabled," Velksel repeated. "Yes, Great Arbiter. Station by station, satellite by satellite. The system is shutting itself down. We don't know how. We can't stop it. It's impossible. The defense system has 17 backup systems. It cannot be disabled remotely, and yet it is happening." Velksel's voice cracked slightly. "We are blind, Great Arbiter. Whatever is out there, we cannot see it." Tion rose from his seat. His old bones protested, but he ignored them. He approached the main screen and brought up the display of Axiom Prime's defensive systems. What he saw made his heart he had 3 of them skip a beat. The display was almost completely dark. Where thousands of defensive stations should have been glowing green, there was nothing. Empty, quiet, dead. "How?" he whispered. "We don't know. Our technicians are investigating, but the main screen is flickering." Then it went completely dark. When it turned on again, a face appeared on it, a human face. Tion had seen many humans in his long life. They were ordinary servants, encountered on every world of the Concord. He never paid them much attention. They all looked more or less the same to him, soft, weak, with those strange, flat faces and 2 eyes placed too close together. But this face was different. This face looked at him with an expression he had never seen on a human. It looked confident. "Great Arbiter Tion," said the human. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "You don't know me, but I know you." Tian tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. "I will tell you something now," the human continued. "Something important. Please listen carefully, because I will say it only once." Around him, his aides and commanders stood frozen. On every screen in the chamber, on every screen on Axiom Prime, the same face appeared. The same voice spoke. "You studied us for 3 days. We studied you for 70 years. The screen flickered again. The human face was replaced by an image of space over Axiom Prime. Empty space, filled with stars, and nothing else. Then the stars began to disappear. Something was moving. Something huge? Something that blotted out the light of distant suns as it passed before them? Something that was approaching? "What is it?" someone whispered. The answer came a moment later, when the thing revealed itself. Taeon had seen many warships in his life. Velkari dreadnoughts, Kater battlecruisers, Moldok assault carriers, ships the size of small cities, bristling with weapons capable of destroying worlds. This was bigger. The ship that appeared over Axiom Prime was 12 kilometers long. Its hull was black as the void, covered in weapons Taeon didn't recognize. Some of them looked like Velkari plasma cannons, but modified, improved. Others looked like Kater energy projectors, but wrong, somehow designed in ways that shouldn't have worked. And some looked like nothing he had ever seen. "Impossible," he exhaled. The human face appeared on the screen again. "You are probably thinking how," said Admiral Tanaka. "You are probably thinking that this is unreal, that humans couldn't build something like this, that we are too weak, too primitive, too obedient." She smiled. It was a nasty expression. "Let me explain. For 70 years, your species used us as labor. You put us in your factories, in your mines, in your shipyards. You gave us access to your technology because you needed us to repair it. You showed us your secrets because you never assumed we were paying attention." On the screens, the massive ship slowly rotated, showcasing its weapons arrays. There were plasma cannons, energy projectors, missile launchers, and devices he couldn't identify. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. "Every tool you gave us, we copied. Every manual we cleaned, we memorized. Every overheard conversation we recorded." Tanaka's voice grew firmer. "You thought we were stupid. You thought we were broken. You thought because we bowed our heads and called you master, we accepted our place? You were wrong." Taeon finally found his voice. "This changes nothing," he said, trying to sound authoritative. "You have one ship, we have thousands. You cannot fight the entire Concord." "One ship?" Tanaka laughed. It was a joyless sound. "Great Arbiter, you thought we built only one ship in 70 years? The screen changed again. A map appeared, a map of the Concord's space, dotted with points of light. As he watched, more points appeared. Then more. Then more. 17 shipyards, Tanaka said. 32 capital-class ships, 112 support vessels, 230,000 trained crew members. She paused for effect. 6 billion humans throughout the Concord's space, each of whom has been waiting for this moment their entire lives. "You are bluffing," Taeon said. Tanaka's voice was icy. "Check your communication. Check your border fleets. Check your mining colonies and processing stations and all the facilities where humans work. Check, Great Arbiter, and then tell me I am bluffing." Taeon turned to his communications officer. "Report," he demanded. "What is our status throughout the Concord's space?" The officer's hands trembled as he worked the console. Reports began to pour in. Each was worse than the last. 3 border fleets had gone silent. Not destroyed, just silent. Their communication was cut by unknown means. Several orbital stations reported internal problems, power failures, computer glitches, doors that wouldn't open, and airlocks that wouldn't close. A dozen mining colonies had gone silent. Their human population had stopped responding to the overseer's commands. And everywhere, in every sector, human workers were dropping their tools and standing still. Millions of them, waiting. "It's a coordinated attack," said Velksel. His voice was empty. "Throughout the Concord space, simultaneously. How is this possible?" "You taught us," Tanaka replied. The screen switched back to her face. "Your communication technology, your coordination protocols, your command and control systems. We studied it all, we improved it, and now we are using it against you." Taeon's mind raced. He was old, but not slow. He understood what was happening. Its scale, the planning that must have been involved. The incredible patience and discipline required to keep a secret of such size for so long. He also understood something else. "You don't want negotiations?" he asked. It wasn't a question. No, Tanaka agreed. We don't. We have been planning this moment for 70 years. We know exactly what we want, and we know exactly how to get it. How many of you must die before the rest realize what you want? Taeon asked. Everything, she said. Earth, our colonies, our people, our freedom, everything you took from us, returned. Everything you did to us, paid for, impossible. The Concord never. The Concord will do what it must to survive. Tanaka's voice pierced his words like a blade. You have ruled for 40 years by being stronger than everyone else. That ends today. From now on, you deal with us as equals, or you don't deal with us at all. Taeon felt something he hadn't felt for centuries. True fear uncontrolled by political maneuvering or the distant threat of rival species. True fear, the kind that grips the heart and squeezes. If you attack us, he said, searching for any leverage, we will respond with everything we have, the full might of the Concord army. You cannot defeat 12 ancient species. Tanaka smiled again. This time there was something almost sad in her expression. Great Arbiter, she said. I was born in a labor camp on Mars. I never saw the sky until I was 40. I watched my friends die in the mines and in factories, work to death for species that considered us animals. She paused. Do you think we are afraid of death? Do you think the threat of war will make us retreat? We have been dying every day for 70 years. The only difference now is that we can fight back. The screen over Axiom Prime went dark. Terra's Spite took position. Its weapons hummed with power. Around it, space began to ripple as other ships appeared from their hiding places. Human ships, each one a miracle of stolen technology and desperate genius. In the great hall of the summit, representatives of the 12 ancient species stood in shocked silence. They had come here to celebrate their eternal dominion over the stars. Instead, they watched that dominion collapse. Great Arbiter Taeon made a decision in less than a minute. He was 3,000 years old. He had survived political coups, assassinations, and wars between the ancient species themselves. He had not lived this long without hesitating when action was required. Call the emergency fleet, he ordered. All ships in the Axiom system converge on our position. Destroy these ships. His officers rushed to carry out the order. The emergency fleet was exactly what its name implied. A reserve force kept hidden on the outer edges of the Axiom system, ready to respond to any threat to the summit. 400 warships, crewed by the best warriors of all 12 species, enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. Great Arbiter, said Commander Velxel cautiously. Are you sure this is wise? We don't know what capabilities these human ships possess. Perhaps we should try to negotiate. Negotiate with slaves? With animals? Taeon's voice cracked like a whip. The Concord does not negotiate with species that forget their place. We destroy them completely. As a warning to all others who might be watching, the order was given. Throughout the Axiom system, 400 warships turned toward the planet and began to accelerate. Velkari dreadnoughts, Kater battlecruisers, Moldok assault carriers, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. On the bridge of Terra's Spite, Admiral Tanaka watched them approach. How many? She asked. 417 vessels, Admiral, reported her tactical officer, including 90 dreadnoughts of the Velkari, 43 Kater battlecruisers, and 91 Moldok assault carriers. The rest are support vessels and escorts. Time to impact. 17 minutes. Tanaka nodded. She had expected this. The Concord's response to any challenge was always the same, overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy they couldn't just crush with numbers and firepower. That was about to change. Signal the fleet, she said. Formation Beta, all ships to battle stations. Fire at will on my command. Around Terra's Spite, the human fleet took position. 17 capital-class ships, each smaller than the Concord's dreadnoughts, but bristling with weapons the ancient species had never seen. Between them, dozens of smaller vessels, corvettes, fighters, support ships formed a defensive screen. It was a tiny force compared to the approaching armada. Any observer would have called the battle a foregone conclusion. Any observer who didn't know humans. Admiral, said Captain Rodriguez, weapons officer of the Spite. Attack the dreadnoughts first? No. Tanaka studied the tactical display. Aim for the flagship vessels. I want every species to see their leaders die before their eyes. Yes, Admiral. The Concord fleet continued its approach. Taeon watched from his command chamber, surrounded by screens showing the battle space. He saw the human ships small, outnumbered, hopelessly outgunned. They are running, Velxel observed. They are holding position. They have nowhere to run. Our ships will be in range when the first human ships open fire. Tion expected many things. He expected humans to fight. They were stubborn creatures. He knew that. He expected them to do some damage before being overwhelmed. He even prepared for the possibility of losing a few ships. He did not expect this. The weapon that pierced Terra's spite was not plasma cannons. It was not energy projectors. It was not missiles or torpedoes or anything else from the Concord's vast database of military hardware. It was something new. Beams struck the lead Valkyrie dreadnought and passed through its shields as if they didn't exist. The ship didn't explode immediately. Instead, it seemed to fold in on itself, crushed by forces that shouldn't exist. In 3 seconds, a ship that had taken 50 years to build turned into a twisted lump of metal no bigger than a house. What Tion couldn't finish the sentence. More beams, more ships dying. The human weapons fired with perfect accuracy. Each shot found a critical target. The reactor core of a Cater battlecruiser, the magazine of a Moldok assault carrier, the command bridge of a Valkyrie dreadnought. "Return fire!" screamed everyone. "All ships, return fire!" The Concord fleet opened fire with everything it had. Plasma charges pierced space. Energy beams cut through human ships. Missiles ripped toward their targets by the thousands. The human ships moved. They shouldn't have been able to move like that. Ships of that size had inertia mass limits on how quickly they could change direction. But the human ships danced through the falling fire like water flowing around stones. They spun, rolled, and changed course with impossible speed. Their movements were coordinated with perfect accuracy. They were a single unit. Each vessel covered the others. Their weapons were coordinated to create overlapping fields of fire. When one ship was threatened, others moved to protect it. When a gap appeared in the enemy formation, they instantly exploited it. "They aren't used to this," said Captain Rodriguez, watching the confused movements of the Concord fleet. "They have never fought someone who effectively fights back. Look at them. They are still trying to form traditional battle lines." Tanaka nodded. They had been the biggest fish in the pond for 40 years. They had forgotten what it was like to be prey. A Moldok assault carrier broke formation and rushed straight for the spite. Its weapons erupted. It was a desperate move, brave and foolish. The actions of a commander who couldn't accept what was happening. The spite's main battery fired once. The carrier ceased to exist. "Admiral," said the comms officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the Concord's flagship. They want to talk. Tell them we are busy. They can talk when they stop shooting at us." "Yes, Admiral." The Concord fleet was now disintegrating. Their formation broke as ships tried to dodge human weapons. Some retreated. Their commanders finally understood that this was not a battle they could win. Others still advanced. Pride or duty drove them toward death. A Valkyrie dreadnought managed to land a heavy blow on one of the smaller human cruisers. The ship's shields flickered and failed, and a human corvette immediately moved to cover the damaged vessel, suppressing it with fire while repair teams worked to restore power. "The Resolute is back in the fight," reported the tactical officer. "Shields at 60% and rising." Tion watched from his command chamber as his fleet was decimated. Ship after ship, each representing thousands of lives and decades of construction, vanished in flashes of light. The emergency fleet that was supposed to suppress this human rebellion was being taken apart like meat. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. His voice was quiet, now stripped of anger. 247 confirmed destroyed," answered Velksel. "Another 83 are heavily damaged and retreating. We have less than 100 combat-ready vessels left, and the humans. One ship is disabled, none are destroyed." Tion closed his eyes. One ship. They threw 400 warships at the humans and managed to damage one ship. "Recall the fleet," he said. "All ships, break off and retreat." "Great Arbiter, did you hear me? Retreat. This battle is lost." The order was given. The surviving Concord ships began to pull away. Their engines strained to get out of the line of fire. Some got away, others didn't. The human ships pursued them. Weapons were still firing, destroying any vessel that moved too slowly. 11 minutes. The battle had lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers. 312 Concord warships destroyed. Another 63 damaged and drifting. The greatest military defeat in the history of the galaxy. On Terra's spite, Admiral Tanaka allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. Then she turned to her comms officer. "Open a channel to the planet." "Channel open, Admiral." Tanaka gathered herself. The words she was about to speak would be heard over Axiom Prime, throughout the Concord, throughout the galaxy. They had to be perfect. "Great Arbiter Theon," she said. You sent 400 ships to destroy us. I counted fewer than 90 remaining. Do you want to try again? There was no long pause. Then, Tion's face appeared on the screen. He looked old now, older than before the battle. His gaze was dull, his copper skin pale. What do you want? He asked. I told you what we want. Earth, our colonies, our people, our freedom, everything you took from us, returned. The Concord never. The Concord just lost 300 ships in 11 minutes. Tanaka's voice was icy. We have 32 capital-class ships, great arbiter, and factories that are building more every day. How many more battles do you want to lose? Tion was silent. I understand this is difficult for you, Tanaka continued. You ruled the galaxy for 40 years. You were never meant to consider other species equals, but that era has ended. You can accept this now while your empire is still intact, or you will learn it the hard way. His face went pale. What do you want? He repeated. I told you what we want. Everything. You are asking for the impossible, Tion uttered. The other species will never agree. Then convince them. You are the great arbiter. That is your job. Tanaka leaned forward. Let me make one thing clear. We don't want to destroy the Concord. We don't want war. We want our home, our freedom, and a chance to live in peace. Give us that, and we will be the best neighbors you have ever had. Refuse. She paused, and we will show you what we have built for war. The screen went dark. In his command chamber, Tion sat alone, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he believed in. For 3,000 years he had ruled with absolute certainty. Confident in the power of the Concord, confident in the superiority of his species, confident that the natural order would never change. Now, that certainty was gone. Humanity was supposed to be crushed. It was supposed to be broken. 70 years of slavery, 3 generations of oppression. That should have been enough to destroy any species. Instead, it created something new, something dangerous, something the Concord had never faced before, an enemy that couldn't be broken, only killed, or negotiated with. Tion now understood something he hadn't before. The mistake was not in conquering Earth. The mistake was not in enslaving humanity. The mistake wasn't even in underestimating human intelligence or resolve. The mistake was thinking that humans could be broken. They couldn't. They could be beaten, oppressed, forced to bow. But somewhere inside them, something always survived. A spark that couldn't be extinguished, a fury that couldn't be satisfied, a will that couldn't be crushed. The Concord tried to extinguish that spark for 70 years. Instead, they fanned it into a fire that was now burning their empire to the ground. Over Axiom Prime, Terra's spite held its position. Its weapons hummed with power. Its crew watched the ruins of the Concord's fleet floating by. The battle was over. The war was only beginning. But for the first time in 7 decades, humanity had hope. Admiral Tanaka stood at the screen, looking down at the precious world below, where on this world the leaders of the 12 ancient species were learning what it meant to be afraid. Learning what it meant to face an enemy they couldn't just destroy. Learning what it meant to be human. Admiral, said Captain Rodriguez, what now? Tanaka turned away from the screen. Her face was calm, but in her eyes there was something ferocious and bright. Now we negotiate, she said. And if they don't want to negotiate, we will fight. Either way, this will end with our people being free. Whatever it costs, whatever the price. She walked to the bridge door, then stopped and looked back. We named this ship Terra's Spite, she said, because it was spite that sustained us all these years. Spite, stubbornness, and an absolute unwillingness to give up. They thought they could break us with cruelty and time. They were wrong. They made us stronger. They made us smarter. They made us ready for this moment. Her voice softened. And now, let's show them what that means. The great hall of the summit had never been so quiet. Representatives of the 12 ancient species sat in their seats, but there was none of the usual noise and movement that filled these gatherings. No whispered conversations, no political games, only silence, heavy and thick, like the air before a storm. They waited. Great Arbiter Tion sat on his throne of black crystal, looking older than anyone had ever seen him. In the hours since the battle, reports had poured in from across the Concord space. None of them were good. Another 3 border fleets had gone silent. Not destroyed, just silent. Their communication was cut. Their positions were unknown. Human workers on 100 worlds had stopped working. They stood in their places, tools in hand, but they didn't move. They didn't speak. They just waited. Their eyes were fixed on monitors showing the battle over Axiom Prime, playing on repeat. Everywhere, in every corner of the Concord's vast empire, everything was falling apart. Computer systems were failing. Transport networks were breaking down. Orbital platforms were losing power, minor problems, each on its own. But together they painted a picture of an empire that was slowly, systematically disintegrating. "How is this possible?" demanded Arbiter Krex of the Moldoc. His species was famous for aggression and a love for direct action. How can a slave species coordinate attacks over such distances? They have no leadership, no organization, no. "They have all of that," interrupted Tion. His voice was weary. "They have had it for decades. We just chose not to see." The doors of the chamber opened. Admiral Yuki Tanaka entered alone. She was dressed in a simple gray uniform. No decorations, nothing that hinted at rank or status. Her face was calm, her eyes firm. She moved with the controlled confidence of a person who knew exactly where they were and what they were doing. Behind her, the doors closed. The guards moved to block the exit, but Tanaka seemed not to notice. She walked to the center of the chamber and stopped, looking at the assembled rulers of the galaxy. "Great Arbiter," she said. "Arbiters, thank you for receiving me." "You were not invited," said Arbiter Vess of the Cater sharply. "You appeared in this chamber without permission. It is a violation of the same protocols that allow your species to destroy others without trial." Tanaka's voice was steady. "My apologies. I must have missed that chapter in your laws." Vess opened his mouth to reply, but Tion raised a hand. "Admiral Tanaka," he said. "You asked for this meeting. Speak." Tanaka nodded. She reached into her pocket and took out a small data tablet, which she placed on the table before her. "These are our conditions," she said. "They are not up for negotiation." "You are taking too much upon yourself," said Arbiter Mool of the Stan. His species had 6 arms, and no-face humans would recognize just a cluster of sensory organs arranged without any order. "You won one battle. The Concord possesses resources you cannot imagine." "You have resources," Tanaka agreed. "Ships, weapons, workers, all very impressive." She paused. "Tell me, Arbiter Mool, how many of your workers are humans?" Mool said nothing. "There are 4 billion of them," Tanaka continued. 4 billion humans are working in your facilities right now, mining your minerals, building your ships, maintaining your infrastructure. If they all stopped working simultaneously, what would happen? They would be severely punished. They would be dead," Mooley agreed. "And you would be left with 4 billion corpses and no one to run your systems. How long would your civilization last without its workforce?" The chamber fell into silence. "This is not a threat," Tanaka said. "This is a fact. Humans make up a significant portion of the workforce for every species in this room. You designed it that way yourself. We reproduce quickly, we work hard, and we die cheaply. Very efficient." Her voice grew harder, but that didn't mean she was angry. "But that means we are everywhere in your minds, in your factories, in your homes. And now, for the first time, we are coordinated, we are armed, and we are spiteful." "What do you want?" Tion asked. "I told you everything." Tanaka picked up the tablet. Point 1. Immediate return of Earth and all human colonial territories. Point 2. Liberation of all humans currently in slavery, with transportation provided to wherever they wish to go. Point 3. Reparations for 70 years of slavery, calculated with compound interest. Point 4. Full recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with all the rights and protections granted to members of the Concord. "Impossible," said Arbiter Krex. "The resources alone are a fraction of what you took from us." Tanaka's voice cracked like a whip. "For 70 years, humans worked for your mines, built your ships, cleaned your stations. We received nothing. We were given nothing but enough food to survive. Do you have any idea what that labor is worth?" She touched the tablet, and on every screen in the chamber appeared numbers. "I have an idea. We calculated it. Each hour of work, each human life spent in your service, each child who grew up without knowing freedom, the total sum," she paused, "is more than the combined GDP of the Concord over the last 500 years. The representatives stared at the numbers. Some began to speak, but their voices died in their throats. "Obviously, we don't expect you to pay that," Tanaka continued. "It would bankrupt every species in this room. But you will pay something. Consider it a lesson, a reminder of the true cost of slavery." "And if we refuse?" asked Tion. Tanaka looked at him with a long gaze. No one spoke. "Great Arbiter," she finally said. "You know why we named our first ship Terra's Spite? I assume it was symbolic. It was, but not in the way you think. Tanaka stepped closer to the throne, close enough that the guards tensed. Spite is a funny emotion. Most species don't understand it. The Velkari, of course, don't understand it. Your word for it translates to small malice, doesn't it? Something insignificant to you? She stopped at the foot of the throne's steps, but human spite was different. Human spite forced slaves to work in the fields for generations, waiting for a chance to escape. Human spite kept resistance fighters alive in the forests for years, eating roots and dreaming of home. Human spite outlived kings and tyrants and empires that seemed like they would last forever. Her voice lowered. Human spite built a fleet in secret. Human spite trained soldiers in the dark. Human spite kept hope alive when hope was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. She smiled. That is why we gave the ship that name. Because it was spite that brought us here. And it is spite that will make us keep fighting if you say no. You will destroy yourselves to destroy us. We would rather die free than live as slaves. Yes, Tanaka shrugged. Maybe that's hard for you to understand? Your species lives for thousands of years. You think in centuries, you plan in millennia. The idea of giving your life for something as abstract as freedom probably seems insane to you. She turned to face the rest of the chamber, but humans didn't live for thousands of years. We have decades, a few good decades, if we're lucky. And when you spend those decades in chains, the idea of dying on your feet rather than on your knees starts to look pretty attractive. The chamber fell into silence. Terra's spite was a message. We built it to show you that we are capable, Tanaka said. We built it so you would understand that the rules have changed. She approached the center of the chamber again and turned to face Tion. Want to know what we built for war? Tion didn't answer, but his face went pale. 17 shipyards, Tanaka continued. That's what we have now. 17 hidden facilities. All of them are working. All of them are producing new ships as we speak. In 6 months, we will have 100 capital-class ships. In a year, 300. In 2 years. She spread her hands. In 2 years, we will have the largest military force in the galaxy. You are lying. Tanaka's smile was thin. You thought we couldn't build one ship. We built 32. You thought we couldn't coordinate across the conquered space. We shut down your communication with one signal. You have consistently underestimated us for 70 years. Do you really want to gamble your civilization on the belief that you are right this time? Tion was silent for a long pause. Then he spoke. His voice was heavy. What guarantees do we have that you will fulfill your conditions? That you won't just destroy us when you get power? None. Tanaka's answer was immediate. You have to trust us. Just as you expected us to believe you when you conquered Earth. Just as you expected us to believe you when you said we would be treated fairly if we cooperated. We never said. You said many things. Most of them were lies. Tanaka's voice grew harder. That is the difference between us. We say what we mean. We don't want war. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone, to rebuild our world, to live our lives in peace. Give us that, and you will never have to fear us. She paused. But threaten us again, ever, and we will destroy you. Not because we want to, but because we refuse to live in fear. The representatives looked at one another. Whispered conversations began around the chamber, urgent discussions in a dozen languages. Each species was calculating costs and benefits, risks and rewards. Tion watched with tired eyes. He was 3,000 years old. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had seen species challenge the Concord and be crushed. He believed with absolute certainty that this was how it was. The strong rule, the weak serve, and this is the natural order. Now, that certainty was gone. Humanity was supposed to be crushed. It was supposed to be broken. 70 years of slavery, 3 generations of oppression. That should have been enough to destroy any species. Instead, it created something new, something dangerous, something the Concord had never faced before. An enemy that couldn't be broken, only killed or negotiated with. We need time, he said at last, to discuss among ourselves, to consider your conditions. You have until morning? Tanaka replied. After that, we begin Operation Dawn. What is Operation Dawn? Tanaka stopped at the door and looked back over her shoulder. It is what will happen if you say no. You do not want to find out. She walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind her. The silence that followed lasted nearly a minute. Then everyone spoke at once. Debates lasted all night. The representatives argued, threatened, and begged. Some wanted to completely reject the human conditions to gather every ship and weapon of the Concord for a final, decisive war. Others advised accepting, pointing out that humans had demonstrated capabilities the Concord couldn't surpass, and some began quietly considering their own positions. If the Concord fell, what would happen to their species, their territories, their power? By morning, nothing had been decided. But something had changed. Tion felt it. A change in the room, a new reality taking shape. The ancient species were no longer united against a common threat. They were divided, uncertain, afraid. Some were already making private deals, reaching out to the humans through secret channels, trying to ensure their own survival. Whatever happened to the rest, the Concord was falling apart, and Tion could do nothing about it. When the sun rose over Axiom Prime, Admiral Tanaka returned to the chamber. This time, she was not alone. Behind her walked Maya Chan, Amara Okona, and a dozen other leaders of the human resistance people who had spent their entire lives fighting in the shadows and who now stood in the heart of the enemy's power. "Have you made a decision?" Tanaka asked. Tion rose from his throne. He was old, tired, defeated, but he was still the great arbiter. He would fulfill his duty until the end. "The Concord," he began. Then he stopped, and the words didn't want to come. "The Concord agrees to your conditions," he finally said. "Earth will be returned. Humans and slaves will be freed, reparations will be agreed upon, and humanity will be recognized as a sovereign species." The words fell like stones into quiet water. Around the chamber, representatives of the 12 ancient species sat in silence. Some looked angry, some looked relieved, some looked as if they were already planning how to use this new situation to their advantage. But all of them, for the first time, looked at humans with something that hadn't been there before: respect and fear. Tanaka nodded slowly. There was no triumph in her expression, only a kind of weary satisfaction, the look of a person who has finished a very long journey. "Thank you, Great Arbiter. I know this wasn't easy. It was necessary." Taeon's voice was bitter. "You left us no choice." "No, you left us no choice. 70 years ago, when your ships appeared over Earth, you could have treated us as equals. You could have asked for our cooperation instead of demanding our submission. You could have been neighbors instead of masters." She shook her head. "You didn't. And this is the result. Not because we wanted this, but because you made us this way. Every weapon we built, every strategy we developed, every moment of fury and spite that sustained us, it all came from what you did to us. We are your creation, Great Arbiter, your masterpiece." She turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing," she said. "The people who served you, those being freed today, they will need time. Time to heal. Time to learn what it means to be free. Some of them won't know how to live without masters. Some of them will be angry for a very long time." Her voice softened. "Be patient with them. They have been through what none of you can imagine, and they will need help. Not because they are weak, but because healing takes time." She walked to the door. Her people followed her. "Admiral Tanaka," Tion called. She stopped. "Whatever it costs, I am sorry for what we did, for what you endured." Tanaka froze for a long moment. Then she turned her head slightly, not quite looking back. "I know," she said. "But apologies are not enough to bring back our dead. Apologies are not enough to erase the memories. Apologies are just words." She paused. "What matters is what happens now. We have a chance to build something new, something better than what was before, for both our peoples. Don't waste it." She walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind her. Outside, the bright sun shone over Axiom Prime. Above, Terra's spite hung in orbit, a dark shape against the stars. And throughout the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, billions of humans looked up at the sky. For the first time in 70 years, they looked without fear. Freedom hadn't come easily, quickly, or without a price, but it had come, and humanity would never let it go again. On the bridge of Terra's spite, Admiral Tanaka stood at the screen and watched the sunrise over Axiom Prime. Behind her, her crew worked quietly, tracking communications, monitoring ship movements, performing the thousands of small tasks that kept a warship operational. The war was over, or at least, this part of it. Ahead lay new difficulties, negotiations and treaties, and the long, hard work of creating a new society. There would be people who couldn't let go of their anger, and Concord species that couldn't let go of their pride. There would be failures and mistakes and moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart. But they had won against the odds, against an enemy that had ruled the galaxy for 40 years. They had won. Yuki Tanaka thought of her mother, who had died in the mines when Yuki was small. She thought of all the other millions of people who had lived and died in slavery, never knowing that their children would one day be free. She wondered, would they have been proud? A soft chime from her console caught her attention. She looked down and saw a message from the planet below. The first official message from the Concord to a free humanity. She hadn't read it yet. She would have time for that later. For now, she just wanted to watch the sunrise. It was the first one she had ever seen as a free woman, and it was beautiful.